part of reframing ourselves and harnessing the art of reframing is to open ourselves to look at new perspectives. We need to be open to these new perspectives because we can learn a lot from different things that we would never expect would help us in the long run. Through my experience through ROTC, doing my undergraduate in business management, doing my graduate degree in pastoral counseling, becoming a public notary, bus driver, substitute teacher, and other various experiences has all built up to make my ministry strong for youth ministry. Even though it may not seem like they have the natural overlaps, there's a lot of principles that I've learned from each of these areas. And if it wasn't for me being willing to try to look at new perspectives, I would have boxed myself in a way that I would not be able to go out and lead people. Moses believed he could not lead God's people because of his disadvantages. The reality is that God can use all people in a lot of different situations. We just have to reframe our mind in a way that we see ourselves in a new light. Ephesians 2:10 says that we are God's workmanship to do good. So when we do things, we do all things for Christ our Lord. We do these things because we know that we are built for a higher purpose. And when we know that we have an influence, when we know that we have purpose, when we know we have an impact, we then look at these new perspectives and say, I'm going to give it my all. I'm going to take in information, I'm going to receive, and I'm going to look at things in a different way. One of the things that we discussed in not only this course, but also something that I've discussed in previous courses, was this thing called confirmation bias. It is choosing to look at evidence or information to confirm things that we already believe. It is reaffirming the information that we already have, essentially, is how I'd reword that. The way that this would be put into play is if you wake up and you didn't get enough sleep that night before, you say, I'm going to have a bad day. Now, the rest of the day, what ends up happening is that anything that goes wrong, you are saying, see, I knew it. I was going to have a bad day. Whether it is that you stub your toe, you hit all the red lights, or McDonald's does not have your caramel frappe, you just say, once again, this is the reason why I'm going to have a bad day. I knew it from the time that I woke up. But as we reframe our minds and we look at new perspectives, I challenge us to go to Colossians 3. It says, since then you have been raised with Christ. Set your hearts on the things above where Christ is, seated at the right hand of God. Set your minds on the things above, not on earthly things. For you died and your life is now hidden with Christ in God. When Christ, who is yours, life, appears, then you also will appear in his glory. See, this is telling us to redirect our minds to the things on heaven above. It is looking at things from a godly perspective than from our own perspective. We limit ourselves when we rely on our own information. But when we gain information from things like other companies, other businesses, things that are not normally what we're accustomed to, we then expand ourselves. We reframe our minds. There was these teenagers that wrote this book called To Do Hard Things. And they dissected the current teenage culture against the past teenage culture. See, now we feel guilty if we ask our kids to clean their rooms, or if we tell them to do their laundry, pick up certain things, brush your teeth, just little minor everyday items. But they point out that in the past, 13-year-olds were leading and commanding battleships. Not just a ship that would take you on a cruise, but things that were actually meant for war. They also talked about how training an elephant, as they created discipline for them, they could keep an elephant in a fenced-in area using a small, thin twine. Not something that would really hold them back, something that could easily be broken. And yet, because the elephant's mind has been reframed, they now stay within the areas they need. In the book Servant Leadership, It took this pyramid about how you have your followers, your front line at the bottom of the pyramid, and at the top you have your big CEOs, the leaders of the company. Now what this person did was they showed an example of what it would look like if we flipped it. We take a new perspective and having those that we are leading at the top, working our way down to the leaders. Because as effective leaders, we must serve those that we are leading. All of these things show us how a new perspective can change a life. The ugly duckling story, a simple story, talks about how this duck believed that all its life it was ugly, that it didn't have worth, that it didn't have purpose. But as it went out and explored and learned from new perspectives, it finds out that it's actually a beautiful swan. See, reframing the mind and looking at things from a new perspective is like a caterpillar shedding its old skin and turning into a beautiful butterfly. A snake will shed its skin, but go back to being a snake. There's no change, there's no difference. And so as we reshape our minds, we are to look at this in a new perspective.